Hi there, it's Meg, and today we are going to be learning some basics of piano for songwriters. Do 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 do. It's songwriting time. All you need is a rhyme and a little melody with a couple chords in a key. And today we will learn all the basics you need to write a song of your own to express your creativity. First up, we are going to talk about what is a key. A key is a group of pitches that create a scale, which is determined by Western music. There are Eastern music keys and scales and disciplines as well, but that's for another lesson. Today we're going to focus on Western music. And today we're going to talk about building a major key scale. To do so, we're going to talk about the key of C, because the key of C is the easiest scale to learn on the piano, and you'll see why shortly. Scales all consist of a series of intervals, and major scales are built exactly the same way with the exact same intervals no matter what key we are in. So if we're in the key of C, you can first look at the piano and find any group of 2 black keys. So this is a group of 3 black keys, this is a group of 2, this is a group of 3, group of 2. You'll find the 2 and the first white key to the left, that is the note C. Major scale intervals follow a pattern of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. What does that mean? The whole and the half relate to the interval. A whole interval means that there is one note in between the starting note and your next note. And don't forget the black keys, those count as notes. And a half interval means that there are no keys in between your starting note and your next note. So a half step from C would go here, and this is called C sharp, but you don't have to memorize that right now. We'll get into that in another lesson. A whole step from C would have one note in between it. So we're going to have this note in between, and a whole step would take you to D. So that means when we are building the key of C scale, we will follow the whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. You're starting to probably see why I chose the key of C for this lesson. It's because the key of C has no black keys. It is only made up of white keys. So it's relatively easy to play and to remember. But just remember, the main point is when you're building a scale to figure out what notes are in that scale, you start with your scale degree note. So if we're in the key of C, you start with C, which lives here on the piano, and you follow the pattern of whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And then you get all of the notes in the key. They don't sound so great together though. We're going to get to chords in a minute. Now, the notes on the piano also follow the alphabet. So if we start on C, what comes after C in the alphabet? D. And that means this note is D. And same thing as we keep going. E, F, G. Once we get to G, the alphabet starts over again, and we go to A, B, C. So a C major scale has C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So now you know all of the notes that are in the major scale, but how do you know which notes to play together to make it sound nice and to then write a song off of? This is when we start talking about chords. A chord is made up of 3 or 4 notes that are played together. You can technically play any 3 or 4 notes and it would be defined as a chord. Chord progressions, as you might be able to fill in the blank, is when you play different chords sequentially, one after another. It's a combination of chords create a chord progression. Now, if I played 3 random notes from the key of C, let's say the first 3 notes, it's not going to sound great. Technically, with the chordal definition, that could be considered a chord, but it's not a beautiful sounding chord that we're going to want to write a song to. So, how do you build beautifully sounding chords? We are going to talk about how to build what we call a major chord. Kind of like the major scale, but it's only going to consist of 3 notes. Any major chord follows a similar pattern like a major scale did when we were talking about intervals. For building a major chord, you'll start with your root note. So if we're going to build a C major chord, we'll start with C. Then on the piano, you're going to count up 4 notes to find your second note of the chord. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's going to be your second note of the chord. And then from there, you're going to count 3 notes. 1, 2, 3 to get your third of the chord. These played together sound pretty good. So again, to build a major chord, you count up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 3. 1, 2, 3. And that will be any major chord. If we did D major, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Now, the key of C major not only has major chords like C major in it, it also has minor chords. So to build a minor chord, what we would do is start with a root note. I'm going to start with D this time. And you're going to count up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then from the third note, you're going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4. That is a minor D chord. So again, the minor chords are built by counting up 3 and then up 4. This would work with C as well. If we were in a different key other than C major, maybe we were in C minor. You could play a C minor chord by counting up 3, 1, 2, 3, and then up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. C minor. We're also going to talk about which chords are major and which chords are minor in a major key. That's a confusing sentence, I know, because it's a major key. So you'd think, oh, all the chords are major. That's not accurate. A major key is made up of major and minor chords, as well as a chord that's called diminished chord, but we're not going to talk about that in today's video. We'll just discuss the major chords and the minor chords that live within any major key. There's another pattern that you can learn and memorize in regards to this. When you're in any major key, the first chord, meaning the chord that's built off the key note, so in C major, that would be the C chord, is always major. The second chord is always minor. The third chord is also always minor. The fourth chord is always major. The fifth chord is also always major. And the sixth chord is always minor. The seventh chord is that diminished one we talked about that we're not going to discuss in today's video because it's not used a lot in songwriting anyway. And we're talking the basics here. I should mention that today's video, we are only talking about what we consider to be diatonic chords in a major scale. That means we are only talking about the chords that are made up of the notes of the major scale. Meaning with the key of C, for instance, we only had white keys, right? We only had C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So that means every chord that we build is going to be diatonic, can only use the white keys. We cannot use any notes that are outside of the key. In future videos, we'll discuss how to use these notes, even if you're in the key of C. And those are called non-diatonic notes and non-diatonic chords. Today, again, only talking about diatonic because, hey, you can write a lot of songs with diatonic chords. And let me tell you, most of the top 40 songs only use diatonic chords. So again, in a major key, the first chord is major, the second chord is minor, the third chord is minor, fourth is major, fifth is major, and sixth is minor. That gives us the following chords in the key of C. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, and A minor. Now, if you're sitting there being like, whoa, 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 slow down, how did you know those were the chord makeups? Well, there's a couple ways you can think about it. The first way we sort of discussed, where you build each chord based on the major or minor. You count up the notes appropriately. For a major, you're going to count up 4 and then up 3. For a minor, you're going to count up 3 and then count up 4. So if you're in C, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Now you have a C major chord. You know that the second is minor, so you start on D, and you know to count 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and now you have D minor, etc., etc. Another way to go about it is, if you've memorized all of the notes in a key, like we have for C major scale, then you know what notes each chord is going to be made up of, and every chord skips a note. So if you put your thumb on C, you're going to skip a note from within the scale. Obviously, you're skipping more than one note here total, but these are not in the C scale. So you'll just skip the note from the scale, and then you've got your second note, skip another note from the scale, and you've got your third. Same thing goes with D, skip a note from the scale, skip a note from the scale, E, skip a note from the scale, skip a note from the scale, etc. And you know that you'll never hit the black keys for the key of C. Whichever way makes the most sense for you is the way you should think about it. I find both are helpful depending on what key I'm in. But if you know the notes that are in your scale like the back of your hand, then you easily just skip a note each time you build. So to review, what we've learned so far is when you're building a major scale, you build it off of intervals, and the intervals are as follows: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And now you know all of the diatonic notes in a major scale. This works for every major scale. If you were doing D major, you'd start on D, and you do whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. And now you know all of the notes in the D major scale. Now when we go to songwriting, we often songwrite with chord progressions, and those can be major or minor chords for today's video. There are, as I mentioned, more complicated chords that we won't discuss today. Major and minor chords. There's a couple ways you can build these chords when you know what key you're in. If we know we're in the key of C and we know that it's only white keys, we just skip one white key on either side as you move up the scale, and now you have all the chords that you can think of. We'll skip the 7th chord for right now. Another way to build it is that if you build a major chord, you're going to count up 4 and then count up 3. And if you build a minor chord, you're going to count up 3 and then count up 4. And to know which are major and minor in a major scale, it's the first is always major, second and third are minor, fourth and fifth are major, and 6th is minor. Now, what order should I play these chords in? Well, you can play them in whatever order you wish, but there are some really common chord progressions that probably a lot of your songs use, and you can also use. We're going to stay in the key of C for this example as well, but again, remember this can apply to any major key. Our first example is what is called a 1, 5, 6, 4 progression. These numbers refer to the numbers on the scale, like we were earlier saying. The first chord's major, second chord, third chord, fourth chord, etc., as you count up the scale. So a 1 chord in the key of C is a C chord. A 5 chord in the key of C is a G chord, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G chord. The 6th chord is an A minor chord, because we know that the 6th chord is always minor in a major scale. And then the 4th chord is an F chord, which is also major. So the progression would go C, G, A minor, F. They sound nice together, right? One song that you might know that follows this is Let It Be by the Beatles. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Our second most common chord progression is what's called a 6, 4, 1, 5. This would mean that we would start on the 6th chord, which is always minor in a major scale. So that's A minor. Then we'd go to the 4th, which is F. Then we'd go to the 1st, which is C. And then we'd go to the 5th, which is G. So we've got A song that you may know that uses this chord progression is If I Were a Boy by Beyonce. I don't know all the words, but if I were a boy, I think that I'd understand how it is to love a girl. I swear I'd be a better man. I listen to her. Oh, it's such a good song. All right, our next common chord progression is the 1-4-5-4. 1-4-5-4. So we're going to follow the same pattern we've been using. Our 1 chord is C, our 4 chord is F, our 5 chord is G, our 4 chord is F. And one more bonus progression is the 2-5-1-6. This one is really fun because we get to use the 2 chord, which is one of my favorite chords to use. You'll hear it sounds much different from the other chord progressions we were using. In C, the 2 chord is our D chord. And remember, in a major scale, the 2 chord is always minor. So we'd have D minor to our 5th chord G, to our 1 chord C, to our 6th chord A minor. So let's listen to that again. All right, so that wraps up our episode 1 of Piano for Songwriting. This is just the start, and I will have future videos that will help you play these chord progressions in a little bit more of an easy, comfortable way rather than jumping your hand around. We'll also tackle minor keys and what that means for the scales and for the chord progressions. And if you want me to apply this video to additional major keys, like our D major key, our E major key, our F major key, to show you how you can use the same technique we used for C major in those other keys, let me know. Or if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. I am very, very happy to answer them. I hope this was helpful, and I'm looking forward to future videos to help you expand more. For now, get started with those common chord progressions. You should be able to write tons of songs just based off of that. Until next time, bye-bye.